Hello and welcome into the Dave Campbell's College Football Podcast. I'm your host, Carter Yates, and joining me from beautiful Austin, Texas is senior writer Mike Craven. Craven, it was a huge weekend of Texas college football. We had just the perfect quad box going on in the 11 a.m. slate with Texas Vanderbilt, SMU Miami, UNT Navy. And I was in the nightmare scenario because I'm a YouTube TV customer and could not watch any of them. So I had to run to the local pluckers to go get plucked up to watch those games.
What's your pluckers order?
I went Frachos to start off with, the waffle fry nachos. And then I usually go 10 wings. I went spicy lemon pepper this time and gochujang. And the Frachos absolutely wrecked me, so I couldn't finish them. I got some in the fridge right now.
I'm a Baker's Gold man myself.
Baker's Gold solid.
I remember being on. One of the nice things about being reluctant to change is every now and then the world comes back to you. You know, you're wrong for a while, and then time's a circle, and so it comes back. People who really are in bell bottoms probably feel this way, but I was one of the ones that are like, this streaming thing sucks. Like now I have to go through 7 or 8 apps to like watch the same 12 channels. Like I can't just flip back and forth. The quad box is solid. That is the one advantage for YouTube TV. And I typically get YouTube TV for the couple months of the college football season. But yeah, like you said, 5 of our teams were playing on Saturday at 11 a.m., 4 of them on ESPN networks, right? So you couldn't even like quad box a couple of Fox and FS1s or CBS Sports. It was all having to be iPads and cell phones and screens, made for the viewing experience to be rugged for sure. I should have also gone to Pluckers. That was a smart move.
Well, it's so aggravating. What?
I said no free ads, but
no free ads. But Pluckers will make an exception because it's so good. It's so aggravating too because I have ESPN Plus, but then when you go on ESPN Plus, it just has you sign into the TV provider, which ESPN has then pulled from the provider. The provider does not provide. And so it's like, I actually feel old man yelling at clouds. Like, please bring back cable for the love of God.
Yeah, it'd be awesome if within one kind of app or service, you could just watch all the channels that you want to for a price that was agreed upon. That would be tremendous. I feel like every time, I don't know, I don't want to get too old manny here. But yeah, I think it's made it convoluted, too complicated. I feel like every time I open my email, one of my apps is like increasing the pay for $2 or something like that. It just sucks. It sucks for the consumer.
Well, you and I at Dave Campbell's are the 2 most technologically inept people. So
yeah, I appreciate you. I appreciate you jumping in that boat with me, Carter. You could have really just put me on there by myself, probably, honestly. I am definitely the worst, for sure.
No, I mean, I'm right there with you, brother. And this is one of the times where I'm like, technology makes our lives harder sometimes, the cable.
100%.
Okay. But when I did get the Pluckers, I got to watch the Texas game. And they last week had one of the biggest comebacks in school history. This week, they survived it. Won a comeback attempt by number 9 Vanderbilt with a 34-31 win. So Longhorns, for those who missed it, up 24-3 at half, and then Vanderbilt scores 21 points in the fourth quarter, tries to onside kick it, and Livingston muffs it, and about 5 Vanderbilt players had a chance to fall in it before it goes mercifully out of bounds. Huge win for Texas.
Yeah, a tremendous start, kind of a stars matter start to the game. Ryan Wingo takes the first play, 75 yards for a touchdown, and then Vanderbilt gets the ball. Colin Simmons forces a strip sack and recovers the fumble that he forced. And it was like, well, there's the difference between the 2 teams. And so if Texas was going to play it to an even battle on the trenches, the talent around it was going to take over. And that's what happened for 3/4 of this football game. And then, as Sark said after the game, it's always interesting with this program. And so, they weren't able to close it out the way that they probably should have.
But the defense, I've seen the stars matter all year on the defensive side, like Anthony Hill, Colin Simmons. These guys are just built different. I haven't necessarily seen that on the offensive side. It felt like the personnel was worse from last year. I think this game was the first time I saw Ryan Wingo and some of these offensive linemen and Trey Wisner making guys miss in the backfield, where it's like, your guy one-on-one has to make a play and just be a better athlete. And of course, we saw that in the UTEP Sam Houston games, but this was the first game I saw it versus like an SEC opponent.
How much do you think it's connected to the improved offensive line play? Right. Like I think a lot of times, go ahead.
I think moving Cole Hudson to left guard and Connor Robertson to center was a big time move. And it is connected to the improved offensive line play, which has made Arch play better, which has made the receivers around him start stepping up. It's like all kind of feeds on each other.
Yeah, I do think a lot of times, like as media or as fans, we talk about football in a silo, like these wide receivers or this quarterback play or these running backs, but it's all a chain. Like it's all connected. That's what makes football cool. And it does seem like Texas, you look at the box score, they give up 0 sacks, 1 tackle for loss. And it's like, okay, the running game's not explosive. Like they didn't just run all over Vanderbilt, but Manning had time to go through his progressions, and that allowed him to go 25 of 33 for 328, 3 touchdowns, no mistakes. Again, the running game averaged under 4 yards per carry, but there was times where it looked more competent. Like there was some room to maneuver. You saw the talent out there. And then you flip to the defensive side of the ball, 6 sacks, 10 tackles for loss. Like if you're Vanderbilt, you're not going to go on the road and beat a good SEC team with 9 fewer tackles for loss and 6 fewer sacks. Like that is where the game is won. And if Texas can be that football team, like it was closer to what we thought we'd see coming into the year. Like Arch Manning, efficient and sometimes dynamic with the playmakers around him, a solid functional running game behind a good offensive line, and then an elite defense. That's been Texas at times. This one was I think the most complete game of the year, at least for 3 quarters. Like how much does the fourth quarter dampen the mood for Texas fans? I don't think a ton. I take more from the first 3 quarters than the final quarter.
Yeah, I agree. I do want to talk about Arch Manning's performance because probably one of his best games in a burnt orange jersey. You mentioned 25 of 33 for 328 yards and 3 touchdowns is pretty awesome stat line. I did have a friend text me, and I thought it was kind of true. He was a bit of a screen pass merchant at the beginning of the game. You know, some of these were like 75-yard touchdowns to Ryan Wingo where he throws it 4 yards away from him. But he did make some pretty sick throws towards the middle part of the game, like the one where it's off script to Baxter, I thought was a nice play. He's getting drilled on a blitz and finds Mosley in the back of the end zone. The touchdown throw that wasn't a touchdown to Mosley was an awesome throw too. So he said maybe the concussion helped after the game.
Yeah. He's a great interview. Like he is really good with the media. Like you can tell he grew up in a family that's so are his uncles, obviously. To your friend's point, 258 of the 328 passing yards were after the catch. Mm-hmm. So that's 70 yards in the air on 25 completions. You know, that's 2 point whatever yards of play. So a lot of it is that, but that's why you recruit the Ryan Wingos of the world. Yes. And so I don't see that as a problem necessarily, as long as Mosley's and the Moores and the Wingos are stepping up and making plays with the ball in their hands. Like that's kind of what you want, is more of a conductor. This offense is starting to look more like the one Ewers got to be in, and it's benefiting Arch. I think Sark had grand plans of Arch Manning's arm strength, pushing the ball down the field and getting more vertical and being able to run maybe more of the NFL type offense he would run if we saw him kind of at the next level as a play caller. But halfway through the season, I think he went, well, shit, that ain't working. You know, like we can't block well enough for that. Let's speed this thing up, make it simple, get the ball in our hands and ball in our playmakers' hands and go win it that way. And I think that was the right move.
So you wrote post game that we are headed for a scenario where a 9-3 Texas team with losses to Ohio State, Florida, and then either Georgia or Texas A&M. I feel like if they lost to Arkansas and beat Georgia and Texas A&M, they might not get in. But I mean, yes. What do I know?
I agree with that because
you agree with that? Okay.
No, I agree that they would miss if that's how that went. Well, maybe not because of the quality wins. I guess it depends on if the committee cares more about the wins than the losses.
The point is that the path is actually pretty straightforward to the playoff.
Yeah.
And when everyone buried Texas at the beginning of the year, probably rightfully so, there is a scenario where they still make the playoff at 9-3 and everyone is going to lose their freaking mind.
Yeah, I mean, walk through the scenario with me. If they lose at Georgia and beat Arkansas and A&M, they are a 9-3 football team with their only losses away from Austin, 2 of which against teams that are probably going to be in the college football playoff in that scenario, at least one with Ohio State in week 1. And Florida happened long enough ago to get amnesia about it. Like when you lose matters. And last year, Alabama got left out because they lost late. They lost to Oklahoma, I think, in the last game of the season or second last, whenever that was, second last game of the season. Ole Miss lost late in conference play to a team that they shouldn't. Texas, in this scenario, their bad loss was like the first week of October 4th or whatever. And so the data points after that, I think, would make up for it, and they would have wins over some really good teams. And if they beat A&M, they beat Vanderbilt, they beat Oklahoma, those are all teams that are going to be top 20 football teams. So yeah, I think at 9-3, as much, and this isn't a value statement, I don't think that should be. I don't think a 9-3 Texas team should get in over an 11-2 ACC runner-up or an 11-2 Big 12 runner-up, but I think it would happen for sure.
Well, what we're setting up for is in the days before the selection, you will see Texas bitch and moan about how them playing Ohio State and losing would prevent them from getting into the college football playoff. And they will threaten to never play a good non-conference game again, which is something I've always loved that Texas has done. They've always played in Ohio State or a Michigan or a really dynamic team like that. Alabama when they were in the Big 12. And they'll say, like, we're never going to do this again. And that will be aggravating for me because the only reason we're even thinking of putting a 9-3 Texas in is because you played Ohio State and an SEC schedule.
Yeah, I mean, people typically tell you their intentions, and all offseason the SEC was pounding the table for this exact scenario. Like they were setting it up for us to understand that strength of schedule and strength of record and where you play and the gauntlet you play against, and buying in to all of those metrics, the SP pluses and the FPIs that are built in and owned by Disney, just like the SEC is. Did you see Greg Sankey's tweet about like problem solved on the YouTube thing? It's because Disney's in a dispute with YouTube. And by the way, ESPN is the bad guy in that one. People don't want us to podcast and get into the weeds over contracts between ESPN and YouTube, but trust me on this. When I say the bad guy in that scenario, this time at least, was the mouse. And Greg Sankey and them work for the mouse. And so like, if we're worried about ratings, yes, 100%. And I would too, if I was the SEC commissioner, that's the job. They saw what happened to SMU last year. And Georgia Tech at 11-2, Texas at 9-3. They're taking Texas. Texas Tech at 11-2, Texas at 9-3. They're taking Texas like they are. They're going to point 100%. To the quality losses, and they're going to point to the strength of record, and they're going to go, it's just one data point. Like we do rankings, like power ratings and stuff. Anyway, I think it's time to, like, maybe they lose both of those games and this doesn't matter. But then maybe Oklahoma is the 3-loss team that is in this discussion, or Vanderbilt. Like I think it's more likely than not a 3-loss SEC team gets in above an equivalent to SMU last year.
Well, it's just to your point. Who does the power ratings? ESPN. Who owns SEC's media rights? ESPN. Like Greg Sankey.
It's a positive feedback loop.
Yeah.
If I go into it assuming the SEC and the Big Ten are better, and my numbers and everything that my data suggest that, there is no amount of data points that can wash that out because we don't play enough non-conference games against each other as conferences to do it. So Vanderbilt is always going to look like a good win for Texas because of it's feeding the beast. And maybe it is, or maybe it isn't. Right. But like, we don't get to see Vanderbilt play enough other teams to know if Vanderbilt is really as good as we think they are or not. Like that is the flaw in the system. This isn't baseball or basketball where there's, nearly 100+ data points. You only get 12, 8, 9 of them are against the same competition. And so it's an eating of the tail situation for the Big 12, right? Like when SMU beats Miami, it is a sign that the top of the ACC sucks. Yes. When Florida beats Texas, it is a sign of how deep the SEC is, even though South Florida beat that same Florida team in a swamp like a week or two earlier. Like it is just built into the pie. It is baked in to the equation, and there's not enough to wash it out. And I it's infuriating.
And by the way, Fox and the Big Ten are just as naked about this too. Like the way Joel Klatt goes and opines for Big Ten teams on his radio shows and podcast appearances is the same as what ESPN and SEC do with that that positive feedback loop.
Yeah, I could be accused of doing it for Texas teams.
Oh, for sure. Yes, right. I could be too.
Like,
let's get all the bias out of the way.
Yeah. Like it exists in there. I just think the problem becomes when you can't admit it. And I feel like they want their cake and to eat it too at places like ESPN and Fox. And, to me, the only way I would be in favor of getting to 16 is if the ACC and the Big 12 are like guaranteed multiple spots. Or if they start really getting into like, you have to schedule a certain amount of Power 4 teams in non-conference. We need more Georgia versus Georgia Techs. Like we need more TCU SMUs. Like we need more of those to give us more data points. But anyway, that's my tirade.
Well, and the closing thought on that too is like, I want that built in where you got to play a non-conference Power 4 opponent, because Alabama did this last year when they didn't get in. I'm already forecasting Texas is going to do this. They will do the argument of like, we will never play a good out-of-conference game again. We will only play Sam Houston and UTEP. And I just hate that, like, if we don't get our way, we are going to make this sport so much worse for everyone else to watch. If we don't get we don't get a handout here to get in the big dance. That's what gets
and that would only hurt the television channels in their early season rankings, and they don't want that to happen either. So yeah, it's all part of the same thing. It's not a glitch. Like it's part of it.
That's when I hope Mickey Mouse comes in and says, "You must play Ohio State, ha. You must play Ohio State."
It's pretty good. That's pretty good Mickey Mouse right there.
Okay. In a sign of the ACC sucks, SMU knocks off Miami in overtime, 26-20. SMU's first home win over an AP top 10 team since 1974. Dude, it was lit. Shooter McGavin's kicking things off. Fans are storming the field. The goalposts are ripped down. Rhett Lashley is the king of Katy Trail Ice House after the game. Craven, what are your thoughts on this one? This is a pretty special day for SMU.
Yeah, pretty special day. You knew, as we talked about it on the midweek, SMU was going to need some Carson Beck uh-ohs. SMU won the game by 6 points, and they had 13 points off of turnovers to Miami 0. So like I don't know if this is more of a Miami story or an SMU story, but we cover SMU, and so we'll keep it on the ponies. Rhett Lashley 12-1 now in November. What a day for SMU. Yeah. You announced the 2-year extension that Rhett Lashley is a top 10 paid coach in the country in the morning. And then you beat Miami on the hilltop and rush the field and take down the goalpost in the afternoon. If there was any doubt left on whether SMU was happy with the chance that they took and the money that they left on the table moving up to the ACC, I think those are all gone. You've now beaten Florida State, Miami, and Clemson in your first 2 years. You have reached the ACC championship game. You have reached the college football playoff. I don't know. That was huge. That was a huge, huge win for SMU for sure.
It's an all-time bet on yourself story in college football. Like, we're going to forego $100 million just to give ourselves a seat at the table. And I guarantee you, after what they have done in ACC play, it's paying for itself right now. Because imagine like the admissions at this school, how much they're going to go up. Like, people, I think, sometimes don't like to talk about how much football success correlates to university-wide success. We saw it with TCU, how their admissions spike up, after they go to the national championship. I'm sure the same things happened with SMU after they went to the college football playoff. Like, tell me, look at the field storm, look at all the kids down there, look and tell me there's not thousands of kids watching that on TV saying, I want to go to SMU now because of this.
perception of SMU football from the day I was hired in 2021 to now is insane. And that was only 4 years ago.
You might as well have
Like
been a
you go
lifetime
back,
ago.
right? Like you couldn't put SMU and TCU in the same conversation when I started. Like when I was writing about how it was a shame the Iron Skillet was going to go away 3 years ago, you got laughed out of TCU conversations because they're like, why would we even care about SMU? Like they're not even on our same, blah. And like now it's absolutely a conversation. If not, SMU clearly taking kind of the mantle in terms of momentum in DFW. Yeah, like you said, an insane bet on yourself. I mean, it's easier to do when you have the funds to supplement it.
True.
A lot of colleges, couldn't make that bet on themselves. So the privilege helps there. But Scott Simons has really turned that defense around. Like they were in that game because of how much better that defense has gotten. Kevin Jennings, probably not 100% still, but just an incredible performance. Definitely the best quarterback on the field. They still can't run the ball. They had 23 yards rushing and it all came in overtime. But
that's an insane stat.
Yeah. But you beat a top 10 team at home and you don't apologize for that, even if it's more about Miami's inability to play well down the stretch.
Yeah, let's unpack some of this here. Scott Simons just has proven he's the best defensive coordinator in the country, if not one of the best defensive coordinators in the country, because I was ready to stick a fork in this SMU defense in the secondary after that TCU game, and Eric McAllister went just like road to glory mode on them. But Ahmad Moses' 2 interceptions, the one in overtime basically allows them to win that game. Also, the one in the second quarter just completely flipped momentum of that one, because then Kevin Jennings scores on a touchdown pass the very next play. I was digging into some of the numbers. I had a tweet about it, and I'll pull that up. But since that TCU game, they have, let me pull it up here, are allowing 17 points per game, are winning the turnover battle 13-6, and have held opposing quarterbacks to a 7-8 touchdown to interception ratio. That's pretty phenomenal stuff.
Yeah, that's really good. And quietly, Kevin Jennings has been one of the more underrated and better quarterbacks, not just in the ACC, but in the country. Another big day for him. And so, yeah, I mean, SMU's rolling and they got a chance.
Also, shout out to SMU wide receiver Jordan Hudson for waiting until Bill Belichick's girlfriend becomes a national story before he realizes his 4-star status. Because he has 11 catches for 136 yards on the day. And they came in big-time moments. Like his last catch on the sideline made it to where they could kick a field goal to put that game in overtime.
And it was just think of how satisfying that was for that staff and some of those players. Romello Brinson is a former Miami guy. Chris John. It was like 3 of the 4 captains were former Miami players. Lashley was the offensive coordinator. Derek King played quarterback there. And so to beat that team in a high leverage moment, and kind of ruin Miami's chances of playing for a championship, like that's huge. And recruiting, to do it at home in front of your recruits, like going and beating a bad Clemson team on the road, one thing. Like being able to have that kind of moment, like people are going to talk about that at SMU, like the way Tech talks about the 2008 Crabtree catch. Like that's going to be there's going to be 2 or 3 times the amount of people who say they were at that game than were actually at that game. And if you're SMU, like any of those like flag in the ground moments, like they matter even more because you're trying to prove something on the recruiting trail. And it doesn't have to be pie in the sky stuff. You can already say you beat the 3 helmets in this conference. So anyway, just a huge, huge win for SMU, not only in 2025, but I think beyond. And then you couple that with getting Lashley locked up, a day before the Auburn job opens. It was a big weekend on the Hilltop for sure.
What a difference a week makes, where like last week they lose 13-12 to Wake Forest. And then now it's like no one remembers that game because of the Miami win. All right. Another huge win in the DFW area, North Texas. They had Navy its first loss of the season, 31-17. And this sets up a 6-way tie for first place in the American, because all those teams have 1 loss in conference. So according to ESPN FPI, we've already mentioned we love ESPN FPI. North Texas has a 28% chance to make the college football playoff, which is the highest in all of the G5.
Yeah, and a lot of that's the schedule. They have a really favorable schedule down the stretch. They don't play Tulane. They don't play Memphis. South Florida is already behind them. Now they've beaten Navy and have that tiebreaker. So it sets up well for them. Drew Mestemaker gets a lot of the credit, and he should. He's excellent. One of the best stories in college football. I think the story of Texas or North Texas's season this year is the improvement on the defensive side of the ball and Eric Morris's evolution as a play caller into one that enjoys balance, slowing it down a little bit, giving his defense a chance. Like the game as an offensive coordinator is to score the most points. The game as a head coach is to win the football game. And he has gotten so much better at marrying those two things. Caleb Hawkins is incredible. Just incredible. True freshman, 33 carries. He also had 3 catches, so 36 touches for Caleb Hawkins, 4 touchdowns, over 200 yards. Just an awesome football player, and he's provided something that this offense just hasn't had, and that's a star at running back.
So Hawkins now joins Lance Dunbar, former Cowboys legend, as one of only 2 guys to have multiple 4-touchdown games in a career. And he's done it in 9 games. Yeah. This guy's 2 other offers were Emporia State and Southeastern Oklahoma. And then North Texas was his 3rd offer.
Yeah, I mean, North Texas beat an undefeated team by 14, and Drew Mestemaker had 234 yards and 0 touchdown passes. Like they pretty much, I mean, Navy had 311 yards rushing. But like they didn't get dominated in the run game. Like they beat Navy in a lot of ways, and like something that Navy should be good at, that stop of the run. Like you take the defense in there, forcing more turnovers. They forced 3 turnovers. Quentin Hammonds with a couple big interceptions, including one when they were at 24-17 and Navy had the ball and some momentum. And we're talking about North Texas football, and we're talking about the run game and the defense. And that is why they have the best chance of the G5 to make the CFP.
And you talk about, yes, they gave up 300 yards to Navy rushing, but the defense has 20 takeaways, which leads the FBS right now. And that's the big difference. And then also, so we mentioned a lot about how Drew Mestemaker never played quarterback in high school. Caleb Hawkins had 2 other offers to non-FBS schools. Wyatt Young, the wide receiver, played quarterback in high school, didn't even play wide receiver. The safety, Quentin Hammonds, that had 2 interceptions, played wide receiver at Allen High School. He didn't even play defense. The guys that are the biggest stars for them are playing it at positions that they didn't even play in high school, which just shows this staff's development and eye for talent.
And then you get an off week now, an idle week. I hate off week, and I just broke my own rule there. You get an open date here on November 8th. And this is what stands in front of you to a conference championship game appearance, most likely. At UAB, at Rice, Temple, at home. None of those teams, I don't think any of those teams are more than 1 game above 500, or Temple lost, so I think they're 5-4 now. 2 of the 3 not going to be bowl teams. Maybe 3 of the 3 won't, because Temple has a pretty tough run down the way. And so this is exactly where you wanted to be. This is exactly where you hoped you would be in March, April, June, July, all that kind of stuff. You get an open date before to kind of rest up, get healthy. It's table set for North Texas.
What did you think of the North Texas fans ripping their shirts off and doing the whirling around their heads like Oklahoma State has done this year?
I'm not a yuck on the yum guy.
Mm-hmm.
I get within the context of 2025. Maybe North Texas has had too much success to copy that move. But if you've paid attention to Mean Green football the last 5 to 10 years, they should be allowed. If you show up, do whatever the hell you want. Thanks for coming to a North Texas football game. I don't know.
I totally agree. I think it's a cathartic tarps off move. And then also Jared Mosley, the athletic director, goes and does it in the stands too. Props to him for that. And then Chris Vanini pointed this out. Is he the most jacked AD in all of college football? I mean, that dude
got to be one of the tallest too. Wouldn't mess with Jared Mosley for sure. Glad he's on my side.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So let's go to speaking of funny athletic director moments, Joey McGuire wore a Kirby Hocutt t-shirt after stuffing Kansas State into a locker 43-20. Kirby Hocutt played linebacker at Kansas State. Texas Tech is 8-1, and all 8 of their wins have come by over 3 touchdowns this year.
Yeah, they look different than all the other teams in the Big 12. They lost by 4 on the road to Arizona State. Kind of Sam Levitt's last stand. He hadn't really played since then. He's out for the season. That felt like a big one for Arizona State, obviously. He just beat the dog crap out of Iowa State with Jeff Sims in that quarterback.
Shout out Jeff Sims.
So, Tech, for a while there, they were playing with their food a little bit, and you were like, oh, they do have a curse against Kansas State. They have not won there in a long time. And they just have different body types, and that defensive line is super good. Those linebackers are excellent. And they just kind of boa constricted Kansas State in a way that looked a lot like Kansas State typically beats teams. I was talking to James Blanchard for a story last week, and he kind of just mentioned playing the odds of just having more talent, right? And like in the Big 12, the place you can get the biggest edge is in the trenches. Everybody's got good skill players. Everybody's got good quarterbacks. We saw Avery Johnson have some success, obviously, with his legs. But the Big 12 has 1, maybe 2. This is his quote. The Big 12 has 1 or 2 NFL players along their offensive line, and the other 3 are going to be high school coaches. We want to have 3 or 4 future NFL players and maybe 1 former or future high school coach. And like on average, that's going to end up in championship success. And they have the resources to go do that. And I think that's why they've just beaten the crap out of teams when they've beaten them.
Yeah, I mean, they had 12 tackles for loss and forced 5 turnovers yesterday. And that's a Kansas State offense that I know they started the year very slow, but they're averaging 33.8 points per game in conference play before this one. So, I mean, that's a pretty awesome defensive effort. I agree with you for sure about the transfer class, how much of a difference it's made. Texas Tech would not be here right now if not for the offseason spending spree. But I also think they need to get more credit for some of the development they've had. And I'll put egg on my face, too, for that, because I was saying, where's the development in the offseason? But Cam Dickey and Jacoby Williams at running back, both guys, they recruited out of the high school ranks and have been awesome this year, have really saved their season when Quentin Joyner went down, who was supposed to be their big offseason spend, supposed to be their feature back. Baron Morton, I'll put the egg on my face on that one too, was not a Baron Morton guy before the year, said Will Hammond's going to Wally Pip him at some point. He is at full control of this offense. And then Jacob Rodriguez is probably going to be an All-American at linebacker. Ben Roberts is an awesome linebacker too. Got them out of the high school ranks. So they definitely deserve some credit.
Rodriguez was a transfer.
True.
Just one a long time ago. I think John Curry's in that discussion as well. He's been a really good player for them that they've gotten. Yeah, they have a good mix going right now, and I wonder how much a lot of those new faces just raised everybody's play.
True.
There's no denying that Texas Tech will go find somebody to play over you if you don't, and that I think that's a high tide raises all ships type of thing. When David Bailey walks into a room, you better get better. And they had, you said the 12 tackles for loss. I think tackles for loss are always good in connection with how many plays a team ran. Kansas State only ran 63 plays. So that's 19 point whatever percent of Kansas State's plays went backwards. That front 7 is excellent to where I'm not even sure I know how good the secondary is. Hey, Bryce Pollock's good, obviously. But I don't know how good Texas Tech safeties are. How often do you even have to worry about Texas Tech safeties? Because if you run the ball, it doesn't get past the second level. And if you throw the ball, you don't have enough time to develop a lot of deep field, down the field passing shots to get to these safeties. Shieldwood's unit is incredible. And that allows this offense to kind of sputter around a little bit. And then they just score 28 points in a quarter or whatever. And that's just how they get you.
Yeah, they scored on 6 consecutive drives on one point after going down 7-0. It is important to note. Notice how I said on all the developmental pieces, they were skill position players or linebackers or running backs and things of that nature. They are able to shine because they invested in the offensive and defensive lines. too. So that's where the spending spree came in. And as a running back and quarterback, a lot of times you're only as good as your offensive line. And even same for linebackers too. Like they have so much more room to flow and punch the ball out because that defensive line is getting tackles for loss on 19% of plays, which is
for sure. I think they've hit on Sheridan Wilson at center. Jacob Potton at right tackle from Dripping Springs was a player that I thought they did a great job with. And it just, they have a good blend. You don't want to be all of your best players are transfer guys. I don't think nowadays you want to be all your great players or high school guys. Maybe if you can, but like maybe there's like Ohio State can do that, but not even Ohio State. They got Caleb Downs. So I think Tech has hit a good mixture of this. And maybe as they recruit better and better, they don't have to be so transfer reliant. But I get the feeling this is how they're always going to run the team. It's always going to be NFL model where it's, some free agency guys and a lot of draft players. And they've hit. Like if you're going to spend that money, you just have to hit. Because I think the other players in the locker room are fine with David Bailey making the most money. Like there's not another defensive end who's like salty about how much David Bailey makes, or a defensive tackle who's salty about how much Lee Hunter makes, because they're badass. And so if you like hit and you give the right guys money, I think we all know what capitalism, nobody blinks an eye until it's an overrated, weird spend of money where it's like, you gave 1.5 to that guy. Like he sucks. Then it starts corroding in the locker room. Tech has done a good job of hitting on those big money guys to where you can't be like, why is Howard Sampson getting all that money? Why is Romello Height getting all that money? It's like, turn on the tape, brother. Like that's why they're getting all that money.
And this was also similar to SMU's day where like mirroring off-field success with on-field success, they got a potential 5-star quarterback in Kavian Bryant from Palestine Westwood, who he could play basketball at Texas Tech too if you want to. He's just an insane athlete. So that was a big recruiting get with a big win on the field too.
Yeah. Working
College
on
game
and
day
off
is
the
coming
field.
next week.
Yeah, game day is going to be there. Mahomes is going to be there. I will be there in that order. So that'll be fun. Weather should be good.
I
said weather should be good.
Yeah, here's
not
hoping
quite too cold, because sometimes Lubbock. I'm a central to South Texan. Sometimes Lubbock is not very friendly to my thin blood. I think I'm going to get there before it gets too cold, though. I was in Lubbock one time. I think it was for maybe the magazine, but it was like 75 the day I got there and 22 the day I left. And I was there for like 36 hours or something. Just sometimes it'll get you, but I think it's going to be a perfect day. It's going to be a huge game. I wish it was a night one, but it'll be a lot of fun.
Well, let's talk about something not so fun now. Number 22, Houston. They're in the top 25 for a weekend. It's gone. They lost 45-35 to West Virginia, who was on a 5-game losing streak going into this game. Craven, you wrote it in the 10 thoughts. Houston had 4 turnovers in 8 games, 4 turnovers against the Mountaineers. So they matched their season total in turnovers in this one game. 7 of 8 turnovers this year have come into 2 losses. And Willie Fritz said it's difficult for Vince Lombardi's Green Bay Packers to win when you do that.
Yeah, they lost by 10. They gave up 4 turnovers, as you said. West Virginia scored 17 points off said turnovers. So from a down-to-down, play-to-play basis, Houston was the better football team. And they weathered some storms. So they were down 14-0. They were down 21-7 at one point in the first half, and they tied it up 21-21. And you thought, okay, they righted the ship. They'll come out of the second half and they'll play better. But really, West Virginia kind of Willie Fritz. And this is typically how Houston as an underdog or a Fritz team as an underdog goes on the road and wins it. You execute in the red zone on your side and you force turnovers on the other. And shout out, the Mountaineers did both of those things. And so Houston is a good team, but they're not a good enough team to shoot themselves in the foot. If you think about their 3 worst performances of the year, it's at Oregon State, against Texas Tech, against Houston. All of their turnovers come in those 3 games.
Mm-hmm. I don't have anything else to talk about. That's your ball game right there. Like sometimes football isn't that hard to figure out. Football is hard, but it's not hard to figure out, why a team.
It's a shame because Wegman played pretty well otherwise. But yeah, you're not going to be good enough to do that. Gave up 246 yards rushing So, and you hope as a defense you create a few turnovers, and Houston wasn't able to do that. They had some big plays, West Virginia in the past game, but yeah, it definitely brings Houston down to earth, and now they can go about trying to win, 8-9 games. I think they're out of the Big 12 race, though. The other thing for Houston is that crowd, they have to figure out a way to get more people to Houston games. Like, you're 7-1, you're in the Big 12 race, you're a 10-point favorite. It's a nice day. There's no other thing. It's not like the Astros are playing. It's not like the Rockets are playing. Are the Rockets even good? I don't even know. I guess Kevin Durant,
so that's cool.
But I don't think they were playing 11 a.m. on a Saturday, right? NBA players don't get up at 11 a.m. And so I don't know. You see fans talking about it on Twitter about the prices being too high, the parking being. If you're Houston, if you're the athletic department, you have to figure out a way to fill because the idea was always, well, it's Houston, you have to have a winner. Well, you have one, and you still had that kind of attendance. I don't know. They got to get in there and figure out a way to get that better, because you're getting held back because of that.
Well, speaking of attendance, let's talk about Baylor, because we were worried about the attendance at this game. Actually, wasn't too bad. Okay, the lower bowls were pretty much full. Student section showed out, and they were there to see the best game of the season, because just when everyone's burying Dave Aranda and saying, man, it might be over after this game because they're on a bye, they go 30-3 win over UCF. I saw on Twitter X at the Baylor Homer posted a picture of Bill Belichick with his 7 Super Bowl rings and said, "This is Dave Aranda when he's on the hot seat."
Yeah,
which is pretty apt.
Yeah, I did, and it continues to impress me, the buy-in in that locker room.
Same,
because you don't get those type of performances to create that meme without the players not wanting you out and not wanting the coaching staff out. Like, the players have consistently been bought in, and that says a lot. I mean, look what just happened to Auburn. Like that was a roster that's basically rebelling against a head coach. Like, please just get this over with.
It was a Varsity Blues moment.
Right. Like, we will get you fired, like get you out of our life type of thing. And that's not happening at Baylor. And I do think, had this been the other way, had UCF walked into Waco and beaten Baylor 30-3, I'm writing a story on Sunday. And so, back against the wall, like 2-4 at Texas Tech last year, they put together arguably their best performance of the year. If you take away the Samford game, I don't think there's an argument to be made. I didn't watch a ton of, this game got out of hand pretty quickly. And as we talked about earlier, there's 5 games going on in that 11 o'clock window. And they had bigger stakes than this one once it was clear Baylor wasn't going to get upset. The only note I had written down, Michael Trigg, bad mother effer.
Yes, I wrote down Michael Trigg as an alien.
He might win the Mackey. He's the best tight end that I know of in the country. Just an absolute elite football player. Really, really good. A lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, every week when you're scrolling social media, you will just see like a national account tweet out something about Michael Trigg. Like, what the hell is this? It's him making just an insane one-handed catch. He's having an unbelievable season.
Apparently has 11-inch hands.
That's unbelievable. That's you know what they say about big hands, Craven, one-handed catches like that.
Well, those make more sense, because it's like, I could do that with a Nerf ball, and that's what it's like for him. It's just, he's like catching a pebble. It's like Kawhi.
Mm-hmm. Okay, speaking of coaches that everyone was trying to bury, Jeff Traylor and UTSA. They're playing Tulane at home. UTSA is 3-4. Tulane's undefeated in the American. Their coach, John Summerall, is basically getting hired as an SEC coach already. So, of course, UTSA wins 48-26.
Jeff Traylor is now 24-0 at home against conference opponents since being hired at UTSA.
Well, it's all the crowd noise they pump in, Craven. It's all the crowd noise they're pumping in.
Yeah, this felt a lot like the Memphis game last year. It's Roadrunners back against the wall. Are they going to have their first losing season under Traylor? Is he going to have his first losing season ever as a head coach? Like, they've lost 4 or 5 games, and here comes a much better team in as road favorites. And UTSA kind of embarrasses them. Owen McCown, that's
Dude.
what we thought the passing game at UTSA was going to look like going into the season. This is why, this is the front. If you're a UTSA fan, is this more pleasing or frustrating? Right? Because on one hand, it's yeah, they beat Tulane and that's awesome. But on the other hand, it's where the hell was this? Where was this Owen McCown? 31 of 33 for 3.7 and 370. The wide receivers are not only not dropping many passes, they're plucking them out of the air. It was where was this UTSA passing attack? The defense turns them over 4 times, and they don't blink in the second half. They won the second half 17-14. So a complete performance by UTSA, and one that seemingly came out of nowhere.
Yeah, that's the Owen McCown I drafted on my fantasy team at the beginning of the year.
Right. Yeah, that's the Owen McCown that I was it might be the best G5 quarterback in the country, and after the first 6 weeks, people were rightfully being what are you talking about? And then you see that performance, and you see those wide receivers. David Amador is a player that we had big, high hopes for. He had been pretty non-existent. He has 10 catches for 113 and 2 touchdowns, 75 yards after the catch. McEwen goes for 96. The tight end position goes for over 100 yards combined. That was the UTSA offense that we thought we'd see. And it took until the last week of October to figure it out.
Yeah, I see it both ways when you ask, is this cathartic and awesome, or is it more frustrating for a UTSA fan? Because on the one hand, I would agree if Jeff Traylor came to the podium and was yeah, we put up performances like this against Tulane and you want all my offensive staff fired. And I could also see a UTSA fan being yes, and this is why. You know what I mean? This performance today, where has this been all year?
Yeah. Yep. And yeah, you see the upside. And you go, well, in a crowded American conference, that type of team can compete. If Tulane's in contention and you undress them, you have the talent to go in there and do this on, losing it to Temple, those kind of games. It's not the getting beaten by North Texas, right? North Texas got blown out by South Florida. We're not holding that against North Texas. Those, you sometimes lose to really good teams, and sometimes it gets out of hand and it slips away from you, and the other team goes on the roll. For UTSA fans, the frustrations have been the at Tulsa, the at Temples, the at Rices, those games where it's the team that beats Memphis at home, the team that beats Tulane at home. Why doesn't that exist on a more week in, week out basis? And that, to me, that's the thing the Roadrunners have to figure out, because it's clearly still in there. The ceiling is still in there. How do you find it on a more consistent basis?
One of the answers would be maybe they don't have enough money to compete like that for conference championships on a year-by-year basis, or at least that was kind of what Jeff Traylor was saying in the press conference after this game. He was kind of using this win to say, hey, man, we need help from the boosters. We're practicing in an indoor that's 100 degrees still. We don't have the air conditioning working there. The goalpost is moving in college football, which is it's tough because I agree with him. Again, I'm going to be wishy-washy here. I agree. They probably need more help and more money. But at the same time, as a fan of just sports in general, it feels like the cost of sports is just being put on the fan for everything. Even with YouTube TV and the ESPN dispute, it's ESPN keeps jacking up the prices. It's more expensive than ever to watch sports. You need 8 different apps to do so. We talk about the stands not being full at Houston. Part of that reason is because it costs. You got to take a mortgage out on your home to take a family of 4 to a college football game. And then also for the roster construction, it's all the fans that need to pay the NIL money for the roster. So, yes, I agree with Jeff Traylor in terms of the goalpost is moving and UTSA is at a disadvantage, but also where does all this money for TV deals go for these athletic departments?
This is the part that killed. First of all, again, if UTSA was just losing to the Tulanes and the Memphis and South Floridas that have a much bigger payroll, I think people would shrug their shoulders at those results. But you can't say that for Tulsa. You can't say that for Temple. You can't say that for Rice. But what kills me about college athletics in this new age, especially at some G5 programs, Did you know that meme where like the guy shoots somebody and then he's like the next slide, he's like, what happened? Like who killed that guy? The coaching staff makes like $4 or $5 million, and then you're wondering where all the money is.
Yes.
Like it's in your paycheck. Like that's where all the money is. And if these coaches want to take less money to use it on their roster, I'd imagine everybody signs up for that. Like Tech can pay, SMU can pay Lashley an ungodly amount of money and the roster. Texas can pay Sark all the money in the world and the roster. Texas State can't. UTSA can't. North Texas can't. UTEP can't, right? And so like if you're going to coach at one of those places, like, and again, a lot of these contracts are negotiated before this new era, but like eventually I think coaches are going to have to make a choice. Like, do I want to be rich or do I want to be successful? And maybe being successful gets me even richer if I go get the next job. But yeah, I feel like it's cried wolf stuff. And then the other thing that bothers me is this idea that like pacification is loyalty, right? Like you want a loud and involved fan base. Like, and maybe it's annoying and maybe they don't always know what they're talking about. And maybe there's like a lot of stuff that's said that's just like insanity, right? But like that's better than crickets.
For sure.
You don't want, and so the loudest fans are typically the ones that are also there being loud. And so I never understand why coaches push back on the passion that is going to fuel their, like Jeff Traylor doesn't need to get the attention of the guys who are tweeting every 10 seconds about UTSA football. He's got them. Like the problem is in the silence for the rest of the city. San Antonio's got millions of people in it. There's less than 20,000 in the Alamo Dome. It's not the opinionated loud ones that are the problem. It's the ones that don't care about UTSA football that you need to go search out and find and get their money. And that's hard in a city that not everybody went to college. The ones that did, not most of them went to UTSA. The Spurs are kind of the big ticket item there. It's a very big Cowboys city. Like there's a lot going on. Not everybody is into American football in San Antonio for obvious demographic reasons. So like there are challenges in raising money at UTSA. And he is right that Memphis has more money and South Florida has more money and Tulane have more money. But UTSA's problem hasn't been beating the high money teams. It's been playing well in the second half on the road, and that's not payroll. And so I think some of it falls on deaf ears, I think. But if I was a coach at a place like that, I also would use wins to bully pulpit more money. So like, I don't blame them for doing it, but I also get the eye rolling from the fan base.
Yeah. And I will say too, Traylor has said before, like he understands the game and he is so thankful that there is this loud minority of UTSA fans and he is thankful for them, but he's qualifying some of their up and downness with the money issues. But I think the point about the coaches' contracts is well put because we'll talk about Scotty Walden at UTEP here in a second and it's not going very well. But this offseason, Scotty Walden did a Walden Family Football Challenge where like he matched $70,000 in donations to UTEP's football program. And he did go to the AD and was like, I want to restructure my contract to take less money. Now, that didn't happen. And how hard did he really campaign for that? I don't know. But he gave $70,000, which isn't nothing.
Yeah, I mean, that's like 10% of his money. More than that if you talk about like take home. Because he's not making $10 million a year. So that's like Sark giving $700,000 or $1 million or whatever, So
yeah, that's a lot.
Not for nothing for sure. But yeah, I do think, if I'm a coach that's taking a G5 job, I am starting to think about that stuff. Like, what is the whole pie? Like, I don't need to know what the coaching salary pie is. I want to know what the whole pie is, and then we can figure out how much of a percentage that coaching salary should be. But there's a reason that in the NFL, the quarterback makes more than the coach, right? Like the players are going to dictate how much success you have. And so the more you can give to them, obviously the better.
Okay, let's go on to Rice now. They fall 38-14 to number 25 Memphis. I don't have much on this game, was not on at Pluckers. So Craven, take this one away.
Yeah, just a rough start. For Rice, they had minus yards in the first quarter. Memphis just kind of ran away from them. This one scored 31 points in the first half. And so far, if you look at the Rice season, like there's definitely kind of like a levels to this situation going on with the Owls. Like they've beaten some bad teams. And then when they've run up against like the UTSAs and the Memphises that just have more talent, they're just not there yet. And that was one of those where, they had pulled an upset the week before. I'm sure they had Memphis's attention, and the Tigers are just a lot better football team.
Yeah. All right, let's take it back to Tuesday. Texas State wants to take back Texas. This defense is not going to do it, though, because it was a 52-20 loss to James Madison. This is the 6th time in 7 FBS games they've allowed more than 30 points. Craven, what is the answer on this defense right now?
Yeah, from what I know about Dexter McCoy's defense, it is built on creating negative plays and then winning your one-on-one matchups in the secondary, because you have to play one-on-one in the secondary to create those negative plays, right? And so they're creating the negative plays. They have been good with tackles for loss. They have been good for sacks. The back end is just getting demolished. I mean, they're just giving up anything and everything on the back end, and that opens up the run game. They're getting gashed there. They're allowing, I think, 41 points per game in their losses in conference play. And it feels a lot to me like North Texas the first 2 years under Eric Morris, where offense really good, defense really bad. And that's making a solid team, an average team. I'm not smart enough to know if a change has to be made in coordinator or if this is a personnel thing that can improve it over the offseason and you run this back in 2026. But the light only gets brighter as you move into the Pac-12. You're winless here. Sometimes we've talked about this plenty on the podcast. Sometimes you just got to make a change to make a change. And it feels like this defense is holding back the program.
And I do find it interesting for McCoy that he was a safeties coach. Like that's where he's made his bread and butter as a coach. He hasn't been a coach for very long because he was playing professional football. But the secondary is the issue. It's like your position group that you made your hay at is the problem on this team. And I don't know if sometimes it's just players, not plays. They just might not have personnel, but you got to take some accountability for it too.
Yeah. Their corners are not very good. And that's also like in college football, you recruit your players. So like that, right. That's also you as well. And so, offensively they've hit, defensively they have not. And so one side of the ball is they're averaging over like 32 points per game in Sun Belt play, and they're still 0-4. Like that, you can't have that.
And just wasn't a perfect game from Brad Jackson. He's got to play perfect to even be close in the game. So he has 3 interceptions. Although the hurdle touchdown where he's hurdling a man as he throws a touchdown was insane. So that clip out there for the huddle.
To say something about this offense, James Madison hadn't allowed over 300 yards in a game this season. Texas State had 270 plus in the first half. Like James Madison's one of the best 5G5 teams in the country. The offense did its part. And then the game got away from them, and then you're out of schedule and you're just, but they played well enough to make this a football game. They're down 28-20 at halftime. You give up 28 points at home, like in the half. Like, what chance does your offense have? Like you said, you've got to play perfect, and that's too much to ask a redshirt freshman quarterback.
Yep, 100%. All right, let's go to the other Tuesday night game. UTEP loses 33-20 to Kennesaw State. They are now 2-6 on the season, 5-15 in Walden's first season and a half. I don't think this season's gone how anyone pictured it in El Paso going. It's not how I pictured it. I had the prediction they were going to go 6-6, make a bowl game. I guess if they're 2-6, they still could, but like it's mathematically not over, but it's over for this season.
They trailed 16-10 at halftime, and the defense hadn't allowed a point.
Dude, Bobby Daly's done a remarkable job, man, at defensive coordinator.
Kennesaw's 16 points in the first half came from a punt return touchdown, a fumble return touchdown, and a safety. And then they get back into the game. They're down 26-20. They get a stop with like 4 minutes left, and they get a personal foul after the play is over, celebrating getting the stop that would have cost would have created a punt that maybe you can go down and take the lead, and then you get a pass interference. You got another bad roughing the passer call, which wasn't on UTEP. That was one of the most atrocious. That roughing the passer call on the sideline was one of the worst calls I've ever seen at covering college football. Like it was that bad. And I hope people that follow me know I'm not the referee guy. It typically washes out. That was horrendous. Made the pass interference call that was questionable as well look like a good call. But UTEP, we talked about it earlier with Houston, but it's even more on steroids here. Like they're not good enough to shoot themselves you can't give up an offensive touch. You can't give up a defensive touchdown. You can't give up a special teams touchdown. You can't have a safety and then go win a game with dumb penalties late. And they do everything they can not to win. And you're in the back half of year 2, like that cannot be true. And as we talked about with Texas State, like moving into a new conference almost only ratchets up the expectations. And so they're going to the Mountain West next year and not with any momentum. And then the part that I think makes it really bad for UTEP and for Walden, look what Eck is doing at New Mexico. Look what Mack is doing at Kennesaw State. Look what's happening with Cardi at Delaware. Like teams that are just arriving to the scene. Jack State is on their second coach in 2 years, and they're good and in contention. There's these other programs that it's not like Liberty is just dominating. You know what I mean? Like your peers are what matters here. And you look around and you go like, well, why can't we ever have that?
Yeah, I mean, what is your concern level for his tenure right now? Because this season's been a failure. It's very similar to Texas State of like, this was your last year in your conference that you're about to upgrade from. You're supposed to build momentum, and Texas State's winless in conference, and UTEP is 2-6.
Yeah, I don't think he's in any danger now. Like you have to give the UTEP coach 3 or 4 years, but I don't think he gets the same leeway as Dimmel. Dana Dimmel inherited a program that was almost bankrupt. Like it was bad. Like they had gone winless the year before. Like he raised the floor. Walden was supposed to raise the ceiling, and instead they've gotten the same. And so, he gets 2026, obviously, but if it's more of the same and they don't look good and there's no momentum coming out of their first year of the Mountain West Conference, like I think you have to see what you can do there if you're UTEP.
It is a little bit similar to Eric Morris at North Texas, where like he was hired to raise the ceiling from Seth Luttrell. In the first 2 years, they didn't do it. And now the third year, he's going crazy, and they're having one of the best seasons in program history. So UTEP could do that next year, but also, like we've talked about so many times, Eric Morris' side of the ball was always awesome, and Scotty Walden's side of the ball on offense is not awesome. It's not only they're not scoring points, they're giving up points. Like they are actively harming their defense on the scoreboard.
Yeah, it's not good. And as a head coach, or especially a head coach coordinator, play caller, your side of the ball has to be good. We've talked about it at Baylor ad nauseum. I think that's the UTEP thing here. It's like, how much faith as a fan base can you have when your head coach isn't winning and his side of the ball isn't the one that's helping at all either.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So that was a bit of a bummer, but you haven't seen anything yet. Sam Houston, let's end it here. They played on Halloween night, and it was spooky season for Sam Houston, the Bearcats. They fall 55-14 to Louisiana Tech. Craven, please tell me you spent Halloween with your daughter's first Halloween instead of watching this game.
Yeah, I saw no costume scarier than Sam Houston. They gave up 646 yards.
Oh, dude.
You'd be hard pressed now. You'd be hard pressed to gain 502 yards and only score 14 points, by the way. That's one. Sam Houston had 16 days off to prepare for this game, and we're down 14-0 at the end of the one and 27-0 at halftime. They have 9 penalties. Like everything that you judge a good coaching job on, this team is bad at. And so it's a poorly coached team. I don't think it's all that talented team, but they have regressed in a way in year one under Phil Longo. Like it's getting worse. It's not getting better. They're getting worse. it feels like there's different players that aren't on the roster every single week, just like defecting behind the scenes. There's nothing that you can point to right now in Huntsville that's good, and that's not great. And so bad game, bad week, bad season.
All right, we'll end it there. I got nothing else to say about that Sam Houston team. I feel it's tough. It's just very tough. It was going to be a tough first year for Longo. It's been worse than beyond my wildest imagination.
Yes.
Let's end it on a more positive note, though, Craven. I think some new ESPN projections for the playoff came out. Is there 3 Texas teams in the new projection for the playoff?
Yeah. Bill Conley's SP Plus had North Texas as the G5 team because they have the best odds, right? And Texas Tech and Texas A&M in there. So I think A&M is locked in. Texas Tech controls its own destiny. So does Texas, honestly, and so does North Texas. So I think we have 4 teams that could possibly be viable options for the playoff. I don't think all 4 of them make it, although that would be incredible if 4 of the 12 for Texas teams.
Oh.
But if we could get 3 of the 12, that would be awesome. It had North Texas playing their first round game at Oregon.
That would be awesome.
Take the over. That would be fun.
Take the over. That'd be a tough draw for sure, but would be awesome offenses to watch.
Yeah. So.
All right, that's going to wrap it up for Week 10. Already in double digits, but we just mentioned it's going to be an exciting finish down the stretch. For senior writer Mike Craven, I am Carter Yates signing off for the Dave Campbell's College Football Podcast. We'll be back Wednesday morning.